I mean, that's the short and sweet answer, because if you saved in dollars, if you saved in something that's worth nothing, the true value of it is zero.
Presidents and others who have been very vocal about saying the U.S. should not be involved in this, being the policeman of the globe, et cetera, like that. Do you believe that the U.S. dollar, being the global reserve currency over the past more than half a century, has been tied necessarily to that global military presence, and the retreating from that global military presence necessarily will mean the loss of that global status for the dollar?
Yeah, that's pretty obvious that the United States was the one that had the big stick and enforced the use of the dollar. And now if that stick if we look weak, then the enforcement of using the dollar is going to become less and less, and the dollar is going to be used less and less. The dollar is going to be, all these countries that are holding on to dollars because they have to pay for various commodities or trade deals in dollars. Once there's an alternative for them that they can use yuan or rubles or their own currency, all these dollars that they hold, what are they going to do with them? They're going to sell them. And who's going to buy them? The Federal Reserve is going to be the buyer of last resort for dollars. And let me add, Dunnigan, that if you're a student of history, read about the fall of the Roman Empire. I mean, it's very similar to what the U.S. is and has been doing. Like you mentioned earlier, we've got bases all over the world. Rome overexpanded. They were on a war footing. They started clipping their coins. And I mean, it's the same thing as what we're doing now, is we're monetizing. So it's, at this point, all it is an empty shell. And, I don't know what the event's going to be to illustrate that inside the shell is empty, but it's going to be something.
You mentioned history tells us what happens to empires that have overextended themselves. We also have interviewed Steve St. Angelo from the SRS Rocco Report, and he talks about the fragility of overly complex societies. And this has happened even long before the Roman Empire. There's Asian huge empires and South American huge empires that crumbled in on themselves because their resource supply lines became too long. They couldn't get energy, they couldn't get food, they couldn't maintain enforcement and control over the people on the fringes of their empire.
Well, and that's why I say our world, as an American, our world is going to change drastically. You're used to being able to go to the grocery store 3-4 times a week, stop by on your way home, pick something up or whatever. I think the supply chains, production, distribution, everything is going to be shaken up. So your life is going to completely change. And your life is definitely will definitely change when there's a financial event and you see banks collapsing. I mean, think about it. It was just 3 or 4 months ago that the U.S. Treasury came out and they said, we guarantee every bank deposit in the country. Well, my first question was, who's going to guarantee the Treasury? Because it's not like the Treasury's got all this money sitting in a vault that they're going to pass out. The Treasury has to actually borrow money. And if there's no lenders, who's the lender? The lender of last resort, the Federal Reserve. And they will also be the buyer of last resort when these dollars come home to our shores. They will be the only big buyer left.
For the ordinary person who has worked and earned and saved and hoped for a better future, either retirement for themselves and some legacy to be able to pass on to their children and grandchildren, open our eyes about what assumptions that dream is built on, the American dream, I guess, because if all of those earnings are saved in dollars and not in real things, and those dollars are subject to this loss of confidence, et cetera, and the fragility of the banking system, which we haven't even started to talk about, where does that leave people who have worked all their lives for a financial future for themselves and their children?
It leaves them destitute. I mean, that's the short and sweet answer, because if you saved in dollars, if you saved in something that's worth nothing, the true value of it is zero. And even though your bank statement says, you've got $1 million or $5 million or whatever amount of money in your accounts, your brokers, your insurance companies, and the dollar spends today, that doesn't talk about what the dollar will be worth tomorrow. It doesn't talk about what the dollar will be worth when there basically is the world gangs up on the United States, and that's where we're headed. You're going to wake up one morning. You worked your whole life. You did all the things you were told to do. You were prudent. You didn't take a whole bunch of debt. But when this event happens, you're going to wake up and you're going to be destitute. You're going to have whatever you have, and that's all you're going to have.
Well, when we say whatever you have, people who say, well, I have either $1 million in the bank or $100,000 of cash under the mattress, all of those become worthless in that kind of an event.
And then again, what happens if it costs $1,000 for a cup of coffee and $5,000 for an actual meal and $10,000 for a fine dining meal? And your electric bill now is, instead of $200 a month, it's $2,000 a month, or not $2,000, $20,000 a month. I mean, that's where we're headed. We are headed toward a debt implosion and hyperinflation at the same time. And this is what I talked about years and years ago and was laughed at when I talked about, I think we will have deflation and inflation at the same time. Inflation of the things you need to survive, and deflation of the things that you already own.